Hello, welcome to Doing Business with Warren Galloway. I am your host, Warren Galloway. So you've launched your business. You've experienced some success. Your customers love your product. But is your business protected in the event of an unexpected incident, such as an injured employee, death of a partner, or even a lawsuit? On today's show, we'll talk with Sterling Massey, who's the owner of Massey Insurance and Financial Services, Inc., about business insurance for entrepreneurs. Thank you, Sterling, for being a guest today on the Doing Business for Warren Galloway show. How are you doing today?
I'm doing very well. Thank you for having me. I'm excited about having a conversation today.
That's awesome. So what I want you to do is tell our guests a little bit about Sterling Massey Financial Insurance, Inc.
We started with two team members and myself back in 2009 as the sole proprietorship of a State Farm office. And we focused and we developed the mission of helping individuals, families, businesses, and nonprofits manage financial risk and build wealth. And we committed particularly to that second half because we found that a lot of people understood the need for insurance, but they didn't understand how that worked in their entire financial portfolios and how to build wealth around that is sustainable and lasts across generations. So we started there. In 2016, we incorporated and we expanded our services so that to become what we call a full service financial services and insurance company. And at that time, we had about 2,000 customers. And then today, we serve about 4,000 customers. We bring in about $4 million a year in premium and fees. And we provide a full wealth of financial services from banking services, mortgage loans, to insurances, 146 some odd different types of insurances, 120 different types of investment opportunities. We partner with companies like BlackRock Financial, American Funds Financial, US Bank, Rocket Mortgage. And we focus though on helping the everyday individual, those small business entrepreneurs who wouldn't otherwise have contact and access to financial professionals. We now have 9, 10 people that work for us in various capacities, all licensed in one way or another, and we're looking to hire a few more. So we've been blessed, and I'm having a lot of fun, and our community seems to resonate with what we do. So that's us.
Okay. That's great. So this show is about businesses and how we support businesses. And one of the products that you offer is business liability insurance. Can you give us an in-depth understanding of what is business liability insurance and what are the other types of insurance that they would need?
Okay. That's a great question. And it can get super complicated, but I'm gonna narrow it down to what every entrepreneur should understand. And that is that there are 3 basic categories of risk out there for a business owner. And all of the insurance products out there are designed in one way, shape, or form to take care of those 3 basic types of risk. Now, the first risk I call lawsuit protection or lawsuit risk. Another way of saying it is liability insurance. Lawsuit protection protects the business owner and individuals in the business in the event that something happens that somebody else believes they're at fault for, or the business owner is at fault for. And typically what happens when that happens, people go to court and they threaten or they sue. And so liability insurance protects us in that case. And it protects us in 2 ways. A lot of times we understand the first, but we don't think much about the second as entrepreneurs. The 2 ways that it protects us. First, you go to court, you get sued, or you settle out of court. And so you now have a responsibility to pay somebody because of some unfortunate thing that happened. And so the insurance company will then pay up to the amount that they agreed to pay for those punitive damages for that liability. The other piece that we don't think about is the defense, the legal defense. Most insurance companies, as a part of the liability coverage, they provide legal defense in order to help mitigate the problem, help litigate or defend against the problem. And while the liability portion, the punitive damages portion, is limited by the agreement, say $1 million, $2 million, $150,000, the legal defense portion is unlimited, is to the discretion of the partners to the contract. So that's one piece, the liability coverage. The other piece is the property coverage, the other piece of the three. Most entrepreneurs have some type of property, some type of equipment that helps them do what they do. And if that equipment sustains damage unexpectedly, it could put them out of work. It could put them out of business, either temporarily or permanently. So that second category of coverage that you want to make sure is taken care of is property coverage. It could be the equipment, it could be property, it could be even the structure that you do business in, whether it's your home or an office building or something of the like. So that's second, the first two, liability and property coverage. And the third is for key employees and or key figures within your business to protect people in the event that for some reason or another they get injured or ill or is ill and can't work. So the three categories of coverage that you want to pay attention to are liability, insurances that protect you in the event of lawsuit. That's one. Two, property or equipment, insurance or coverage that protects the equipment that you need to do your job and to maintain the business. And then finally, key figure or person, key personnel insurance, the insurances that protect you and the people who work for you in the event of illness or unexpected injury that forces you to either close down or function at a lesser capacity. Now, within those three categories, there are literally hundreds of types of insurances that you can do. That's why I say this to most people who ask me the question. The key is making sure you establish a relationship with an agent, a person who can walk you through that stuff and who has the interest and the compassion in you and your business and the knowledge. So that combination of compassion and interest in you and your business to sit down with you and have some discussions about what's important to you, what's important to your business, and then enough knowledge and resources to connect you and build the insurance policy that fits you. A good insurance policy should fit like a good pair of shoes.
Very good information. Now, I work with hundreds of entrepreneurs literally across the country. And every time I talk to them about business insurance, all they speak on is general business liability insurance. What about this thing called a rider where you would have errors and omission? There are a lot of individuals who do public speaking or they have home-based businesses. Let's talk about the riders that they can add to the insurance to further provide protection to them.
You know, Warren, I'm glad you mentioned that and you asked that about that, because that's the perfect segue into what I was saying earlier, the notion of making sure that you're working with a person, a professional who has a good understanding or is willing to develop a good understanding of your business, because there are lots and lots of riders. You mentioned errors and omission. If you have people in your business who offer advice, it's important to have an errors and omission rider or a policy that speaks to the possibility that some advice that is given could be wrong and or harmful to a customer. And there are riders and insurance packages that help that speak to that. Some other riders to think about. If your business is a business that requires you to take expensive equipment from one location to the next, away from where you routinely do your administrative, if you need to go to sites with expensive equipment. And you may or may not need to leave that equipment on that site away from your location for extended periods of time. You might want to think about a policy or a rider that's referred to as inland marine policy. Now not a lot of people would even think that it would be caused that, because when you think about inland marine, you're probably thinking about, going out on the water somewhere, but that's really about you have equipment that's expensive, that's necessary for your business, that you take away or you take to various locations. Now, if you have a board, an advisory board or a working board, you want to consider riders around exec board coverage. You want to consider policies there. If you have a significant person to your business, you have a partnership, for example, you might want to consider life insurance policies that are built in a way that funds what we call buy-sell agreements, so that in the event that something happens to either one of you, the survivor has the ability through the life insurance to purchase the business from that person's family or survivors, so that you can continue to work through and do the business that you do.
I want to move on to something that a lot of business owners do not talk a lot about, and that's called business succession planning. We have a lot of businesses that have been around for a long time. They're family-owned businesses. The current owners of the business might be the parents or the grandparents, and they get older, and unfortunately, people make their transition. Can you talk about this thing called succession planning for our legacy businesses or those who are trying to create legacy businesses?
Yeah, it's unfortunate, but a lot of entrepreneurs, they get so heavy in the start of their business that they don't think about the end of their business. And the business is going to end at some point. It's going to end in several different ways. Even if the business itself is fortunate enough to change hands from one generation to the next, there is some planning, succession planning, we call, that will allow for the person who may be in the business now, but may be leaving in a decade or so, or two or three, to leave with some assets that would allow for that person to retire. And then, of course, the unfortunate thing that we don't want to talk about is what happens if a person dies in business. So it becomes very important to succession plan. Now, what do I mean by that? Number one, think about what your hopes and dreams are for the business beyond you. Understand that every entrepreneur who starts a business, they start it because they want to be great. They believe they can be great at something, and they want the business to sustain. One of my favorite authors is Jim Collins. He writes about how entrepreneurs, how businesses become long-standing and great iconic businesses in our country. And he talks about three things that are important to do when you establish a business. Number one, he talks about fanatical consistency or fanatical persistency. And that's the idea of having discipline enough to stay on target beyond your lifetime, okay? And then he talks about empirical creativity. And that's where succession planning becomes so important. Thinking about the vision, having the vision, the creative vision to understand when it's time for me to walk away from this business, do I want it to continue or do I want it to go move on? Little known fact in the state of Michigan, I'm sure you know it because I know what your educational background is, but in the state of Michigan, you cannot own a business in partnership against the other partner's will. So if you're in partnership with a person in a business and one of the individual dies, if that person's heirs decide they don't want to do business with you, they don't have to in the state of Michigan. Now you got to figure out a way to get that done. Some of the ways that you do succession planning, I mentioned before, life insurance is a good way to do that. Life insurance is used to fund buy-sell agreements so that if something significant happens to a partner, the surviving partner can benefit from that life insurance benefit either through the claim or through what's called living benefits, cash value, to then buy the business from the other person, okay? The other thing is making sure at the front end, While you're talking to your insurance guy about insurance for the business, you're talking to your financial planner, if that's not the same guy, about things like SEPs and retirement planning, so that you can walk away knowing that you put a certain amount of the revenues that your business generated over the years into an account that will then allow for you to retire comfortably. The other thing is not necessarily a product, but I'm experiencing this right now. I have children who are very intelligent, and I had always secretly hoped that they would join me in my business, but they had other ideas. They are bored by the idea of growing up in insurance and financial services. They want nothing to do with it. So now I have this business who looks and feels like it's going to out-survive me, and I don't know what to do with it if I don't plan. And so things like making sure you have a living trust that speaks to what would happen to the business and the assets of the business into perpetuity after you're gone.
Very, very, very valuable information. I'm so glad that you were able to come on our show to talk about the things that I see out in the community, but you gave a really great description of insurances and succession planning, and you threw in a revocable trust. All those things our entrepreneurs or our audience need to hear. Is there any final comments before we end the show?
Yeah, two comments. First off, when I get a hold of an entrepreneur early in his career or her career, sometimes they say, Sterling, I don't know if I can afford insurance. Here, understand this. You don't know you're going to need insurance until you need it. Mm-hmm. And most times it's too late at that point. And it's a whole lot more expensive to try and pull yourself up and deal with the stuff that happens. Because we all know stuff that happens. Stuff happens. It only takes a couple of weeks, if that, of being an entrepreneur full time to understand that if it's bad and if it could happen, there's a good chance it could happen to you. You can't afford not to be insured. The other thing I mentioned a little bit earlier, I touched on it. Oftentimes, we look into insurance like we look into buying gas for your car. If you're anything like me, when I'm looking to buy gas, the most important thing is what's the cheapest. If there's two gas stations right across the street from one another, and one is 10 cents, 5 cents less than the other, I'm usually going to go there. Now, there's some other pieces that's kind of important, but they're not that big a deal. You cannot treat your insurance that way and succeed over the long haul. You have to purchase your insurance, shop for your insurance like you shop for your shoes. You got to make sure that they fit just right. You got to make sure that the arch is supported. You got to make sure that the bridge of your foot, the shoe is not too tight on the bridge of your foot. If you're anything like me, you bring your own pair of socks to the store when you're buying your shoes because you want them to fit just right. And you might even bring your dress pants so that you know exactly how they fall on the shoe. Now, you need to shop for your insurance that way, because every entrepreneur has a very specific set of beliefs and circumstances about what's important to them. And if they couple with the right insurance professional, you can build a policy that fits you like a shoe and that makes sure when you need it, it's there. Last piece, the company and the agent, I talked about the agent, the company that you're insured with is just as important, because you want to be around a long time. You might not need that insurance for decades. You want to make sure that company is going to be around when you need them too.
Sterling, thank you. Really appreciate you coming on the show, and we'll definitely stay in touch, and maybe in the future we can have you come back and talk about some of the things we didn't get a chance to talk to, like investments, okay, like banking products that small business owners might need. So we'll definitely be in touch, and thank you again for being on the show.
Thank you. It's an honor. I appreciate you having me. Love what you're doing. Keep it up. Thanks again.
Thank you.